Hey everybody, Jason here again with GD&T Basics. On today's video question line, we're going to be covering derived median line and rule number 1. Today's question from the student is, why doesn't rule number 1 apply to straightness of a derived median line? So for those of you that aren't familiar with straightness, straightness is this symbol right here. It can be applied to either a surface, as we see here in this example, controlling the straightness of any linear element of that surface, or it can be applied this way, attached to a size dimension, and the interpretation changes slightly. So what we're doing here is controlling the derived median line of this feature of size. So we're no longer controlling the elements, the surface elements, we're controlling a derived median line that makes up that, that represents that feature. So if this feature of size has any bow to it, the derived median line is going to be an abstract line that represents that bow. And now we're controlling the straightness of this derived median line rather than the straightness of the linear elements of that surface. So the question is, why doesn't rule number 1 apply to the straightness of the derived median line? So for those of you that are in our course, we tell you that when you use or apply straightness to a feature of size, it overrides rule number 1. Now, as a recap, rule number 1, if we have a half-inch dimension plus or minus 5 thousandths, what rule number 1 is stating that is if there's any bow or form error to this cylinder, it needs to be contained inside an envelope of perfect form at MMC. So our MMC size is 0.505. So that's our MMC size for this size dimension. We have a theoretical envelope that we can never go outside of. So if our cylinder, if our pin measures exactly at 0.505, we have to say there's no form error being allowed. It has to be perfectly straight, right? But if it measures at 0.495, right, we're allowing, if this is 0.495 right here, we're allowing form error of 0.005. So we're already controlling the bow of this to rule number 1, right? However, as we state in our courses, that if you're using derived median line, it overrides the form that is restricted, that is otherwise restricted by rule number 1. So if we're saying now this straightness has to be held with 0.003, we're saying no matter what happens here, this derived median line has to fall inside a tolerance zone with a diameter of 0.003. So that automatically overrides what would have been held with rule number 1 in the size dimension. Now, it's important to consider, though, other deviations in form. Now, our cylinder can do this, which is also called wasting. So if our cylinder did this, our derived median line would be pretty straight, right? If you take the circle here and get a center point, the circle here get a center point, the circle here get a center point, we have a pretty straight derived median line that would definitely pass 3 thousandths. But our size dimensions still need to fall within, right, our half-inch plus or minus 5 thou. So this couldn't be any less than 0.495. This couldn't get any larger than 0.505. But we're controlling the straightness of this center line to 3 thousandths. Does that make sense? So we're breaking that that link that rule number 1 uses between form and size by applying straightness, derived median line, to a feature of size.
Our goal is to be your best source for GD&T information online. It's important to us that everyone involved in engineering and manufacturing have the chance to learn and better understand GD&T on your prints. We have many free resources to help you get started on your learning journey. Subscribe to our GD&T community using the link in the description below or visit our website. Test your knowledge with our GD&T and print reading quizzes. Download helpful charts and access articles written by our training experts.